never thought something as normal as a family barbecue could end with me gasping for air in the middle of a lake. One moment I was standing on the dock, the next, I was sinking, water rushing over my head, while my grandson, Kyle, stood there laughing. Kyle, my sweet boy. Or at least, that's who he used to be. Now 19, tall and sharp-eyed, he smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that warms your heart. It was cold. Mean. I heard him just before he pushed me. "Come on, Grandma," he said. "Let's see if you can still swim." Then I felt his hands, shove me hard from behind. I twisted, tried to scream, but I was already falling. My body hit the water like a rock. The shock of it knocked the air right out of me. My chest burned, my arms froze, and when I tried to scream again, I just swallowed lake water. I hadn't swum in over 30 years. After my surgery, the doctor said not to. My shoulder was too weak, and I didn't have the balance anymore. But nobody on that dock did anything. Not one person. They just stood there, watching. I thrashed, panicking, trying to fight my way to the surface. When I finally popped up, choking and coughing, I saw their faces. Kyle was laughing with his friends. My son, his father, just stared. My daughter-in-law sipped her wine and muttered, "She's being dramatic." I don't even remember how I got out of the water. Maybe it was fear. Maybe some leftover strength I didn't know I still had. But somehow, I dragged myself back to the dock, soaking wet, knees scraped, chest pounding, and no one helped me. No one. Kyle looked down at me, smirked, and said, "Guess you can swim. Tough old bird, huh?" Then they all laughed. That sound, that cruel, careless laughter, stuck with me long after the moment was over. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood up, water dripping from my clothes, heart shattered. And in my mind, I heard my friend Dolores say something she told me just last week: people show their true colors when they think you need them. I walked slowly back to the picnic table, cold and aching. They just went on grilling burgers. And opening another bottle of wine, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't almost died, right there in front of them. No one said sorry. No one even looked concerned. And that's when it hit me. This was it. This was the moment I finally saw everything clearly. The moment I stopped pretending. Kyle wasn't my sweet boy anymore. He'd grown into someone shaped by people who cared more about looking good than being good. People who taught him that being mean was the same as being strong, and that love didn't have to come with kindness. I sat there, drenched and silent. That silence, people used to mistake it for weakness. Not this time. This time, it was a promise. A line drawn in the sand. Because as I sat there, heartbroken and humiliated, I realized something: I still had choices. They forgot who manages Kyle's college fund. Who owns the house they're so comfortable in. Back home, I peeled off my wet clothes and wrapped myself in the old guest towel I always kept tucked away, the one no one else used. I looked. In the mirror, tangled hair, scraped knees, red eyes. I looked like a ghost. But inside? Inside, something had changed. When I walked back into the kitchen, they were all laughing about vacation plans, showing off pictures of beach resorts, arguing over which Airbnb had the best view. No one even glanced at me. No one offered a dry towel. Kyle was scrolling on his phone, dripping all over the clean floor. My son leaned on the counter, drinking the lemonade I made that morning. My daughter-in-law acted like nothing had happened. I sat at the edge of the breakfast table, my body still shaking, my sweater clinging to my back. I felt invisible. And that hurt even more than the cold. Because I remember when Kyle used to hug me tight and say, "You're the best part of this house, Grandma." I remember Sunday mornings with pancakes and cartoons. I remember love. Now he pretended to drown for laughs and stood by while I nearly did. This didn't just happen out of nowhere. That kind of cruelty? It's learned. And I know exactly where Kyle picked it up, from the people who raised him. From the way his parents rolled their eyes at me, the way they brushed off my worries. And joked about how old-fashioned I was. The quiet moments when they thought I was asleep and whispered things they'd never say to my face. They used my house, my money, my time, until I stopped being a person and became just a bother. Now here I was, shivering in my own kitchen while they planned their next vacation. I let the silence stretch out between us, thick as fog, wondering if any of them would finally look up. They didn't. So I stood up, calm and quiet like I always am, walked to my bedroom, and gently shut the door behind me. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the same spot where I used to read Kyle bedtime stories. The lake water was gone from my skin, but not from my heart. That chill, that shame, it stuck. And in that moment, I realized something: I'd been drying off from their behavior for years. Every forgotten birthday. Every time they asked for money without a thank you. Every moment they talked over me, ignored me, laughed at me like I didn't matter. That push into the lake? That was just the first time they did it where everyone could see. I opened my journal and wrote one sentence: they will never get the chance to drown me again. Because that night, I wasn't just drying off. I was waking up. I stayed up long after the house went quiet, locked in my room with the old lamp humming beside me. I couldn't sleep. That image of Kyle, my Kyle, standing there laughing as I fought to breathe, it wouldn't leave me. It wasn't just the cruelty that hurt. It was that he did it. I didn't raise him like that. I didn't just swoop in on holidays to hand out candy and kisses. I was there when his parents were too busy, when his dad lost yet another job and the bank started circling. Where did Kyle end up? Right here. In this house. In my arms. I fed him, bathed him, rocked him through night terrors. I signed every school form. Paid his tuition when no one else could. I built the world he felt safe in. I even remember the day I bought him his first keyboard, secondhand, from an old music teacher. I spent half my savings on it, and Kyle sat cross-legged on the floor for hours, pressing the keys like each note was magic. "Grandma," he whispered, "this is better than Christmas." That little boy, he used to feel things so deeply. So where did he go? I thought back to when things started to change. He turned 16. The phone never left his hand. He stopped coming to the table. Thanks turned into grunts. Eye contact disappeared. I told myself it was just the age. "He still loves you," I whispered, "he's just growing up." But it wasn't just that. He didn't grow, he changed. The signs were all there: the mocking tone when I stirred my tea, the way he'd smirk at my stories, roll his eyes like I was some silly old woman. I should have spoken up. I should have said something. But I was scared of pushing him away. So instead, I let him push me out. I lost myself trying to keep the peace. I let him talk over me. I let his parents laugh when he dismissed me. I became invisible in the very home I built for him. The boy who once cried when I scraped my knee now jokes about watching me drown. And maybe the worst part? A part of me still wanted to believe the sweet boy was in there somewhere. But not anymore. Not after tonight. I closed the photo album, pages full of missing teeth and birthday candles, and put it back on the shelf. Not to forget him, but to protect myself. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's servitude. And I've served long enough. Let his parents brag about his grades, his college plans, his charming social media posts. They can own that. Now. They raised him the way they wanted. They can live with the results. The next morning, I told Dolores everything. I needed someone to see me. Someone who wouldn't interrupt or make excuses. And Dolores has been my best friend for over 30 years. Through every storm, every joy, every heartbreak, she's been there. Just like always, she didn't use the front door. Never has. The side door opened and I heard her voice before I saw her. "Open up, Margaret. I brought muffins and opinions." I smiled before I even reached the door. There she stood, oversized sunglasses, a bright turquoise windbreaker, holding a brown paper bag and 2 cups of coffee like she was ready for battle. I didn't even need to say a word. Before I could say anything, Dolores looked me over and said, "You look like hell." "Sit." "I'll pour." So I did. Because when Dolores tells you to sit, you sit. She doesn't ask, she takes care of you, no questions asked. "They did something? Didn't they?" she said, pouring the coffee without missing a beat. I nodded. Just once. That was all it took. She didn't gasp or say, "Oh honey." She didn't coddle or fuss. She just leaned in, planted her elbows on the table, and said, "Then it's time." "Time for what?" I asked, even though a part of me already knew. She pulled a folder out of her bag, not muffins, not napkins, a folder. Inside was my lawyer's business card and a list of every account I told her about last year when she helped me with my taxes. "You kept this?" I said, staring at it. "I keep everything," she replied. "Especially when my best friend is handing out her love and legacy like Halloween candy to people who'd throw her in a lake." I looked down at the card, Peter Holloway. Estate law. Clean font. The kind of man who gives firm handshakes and listens more than he talks. "I don't know," I said softly. "It feels final." Dolores leaned back, crossed her arms, tilted her head like a teacher who's heard every excuse. "You want final. You just don't want guilt. That's different." She took a sip of her coffee and tapped the table for emphasis. "Listen. You paid for Kyle's school. His braces. His piano. His soccer trips. You let his parents live rent-free in your lake house for a whole summer and still had to buy your own groceries that August." "I just wanted to help," I mumbled. "I know you did," she said gently. "You're better than them. That's the problem." I looked out the window. The azaleas were blooming. Cliff had planted them for our anniversary. He used to say. They were stubborn flowers, slow to bloom but impossible to kill. I felt a bit like that now. I don't want revenge, I said. Dolores reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Of course not. You want release. And she was right. I didn't want to yell or make a scene. I didn't want to storm into Kyle's room and demand an apology he wouldn't mean. I just wanted peace. I wanted to stop begging to be seen. Dolores stood up and pulled me gently by the shoulders. We're going into town. You're going to eat something that didn't come out of a box, and then we're calling Peter. I haven't been to that cafe in months, I admitted. Perfect, she said, already grabbing her keys. Let them see what strength looks like in cardigans and crow's feet. We drove with the windows down, the wind tangling through my thinning hair. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, alive. All it took was someone reminding me I was still mine. The cafe was busy, full of clinking dishes and quiet chatter. It felt warm, like being wrapped in an old quilt. Dolores stirred sugar into her espresso like she was brewing a magic potion, then slid the second cup across the table to me. Drink up, she said. You're gonna need caffeine and a backbone. She wasn't wrong. Right after lunch, we called Peter. He told me to come in that afternoon and said, bring everything you've got. And don't sugarcoat it. So I did. I brought the original trust documents. The binder Cliff and I made after his stroke. And the folded copy of the letter about Kyle's university fund, back when he was still in middle school and proud to show me his report cards. I remembered printing that letter. I remembered how proud I felt. $50,000, I murmured as Peter flipped through it. I started saving when he was 10. Birthday money, bonuses, tax returns. Cliff and I even skipped a vacation one year. We said education came first. Peter looked up from the papers, eyebrows drawn together. It's all still there. Untouched. He hasn't needed it yet, I said. He's at community college now. Says he'll transfer next year. That was always the plan, until he decided I didn't belong. Not on the dock. Not in his life. Peter didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He just nodded, like a surgeon about to make a cut. What do you want to do, Margaret? Change the beneficiary? Redirect the funds? Close it? I stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then I said, quietly, nothing. Not yet. Peter raised an eyebrow. I want to watch, I said. I want to see how they treat me when they think I'm fragile, when they believe they're this close to inheriting. I want to see who pretends to care and who actually shows up. He closed the file slowly. That's cold. No, Dolores said, leaning forward. That's survival. We're not burning bridges today, Peter, she added. We're just checking which ones were never real in the first place. Peter gave a faint smile. Fair enough. We left his office about an hour later. Nothing had changed on paper. But something in me had shifted forever. The fund wasn't a gift anymore. It had become a mirror, one that showed me the truth about everyone around me. That night, I wandered through the house, going from room to room like I was walking through someone else's life. I stopped in front of the fireplace where Kyle's baby photo still sat. He was grinning in the picture, his little dimples showing. That smile used to make me feel safe. I didn't take the photo down. I wasn't ready. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, opened a fresh page in my journal, and wrote at the top, let's see who really loves me without the money. Under that, I made 2 columns, who notices and who avoids. I didn't need to write Kyle's name. I already knew which side he belonged on. This wasn't about revenge. This was me finally seeing clearly. They'd spent so much time planning behind my back, whispering about what they'd get once I wasn't in the picture anymore. But they forgot one thing, I still had the pen. And I'm not done writing how this ends. So I started small. I'd act a little forgetful now and then, pause mid-sentence, touch my forehead like I lost my train of thought. I let my hands shake. Just slightly when I poured tea, just enough to make the cup clink. The change was immediate. They didn't act concerned or loving. They got irritated. Kyle stopped greeting me at the door. Now he just grunted, or didn't say anything at all. If I asked him to help carry in the groceries, he let out this big, dramatic sigh like I'd asked him to move a mountain. Daniel started whispering in the kitchen when he thought I was asleep. She's getting worse, he said. I don't think she's taking her meds. I can't keep cleaning up after her. And Paula, who always pretended to care around other people, dropped the act at home. She left the stove on again, she said loud enough for me to hear. That's dangerous, Den. What if Kyle was here alone? The thing is, I never left the stove on. I checked it twice every night, sometimes a third time before bed. But I didn't argue. I let them believe what they wanted. Let them build their little story. They thought they were being clever, like they were playing chess. But I was playing a longer game. At night, I'd lie in bed and listen to their muffled voices through the walls. They never used my name. Just she or her. She needs help. She's becoming a burden. She can't even handle her own money. That last one almost made me laugh out loud. I kept all my records, every account, every penny, in perfect order. The ledgers were tucked neatly in my sock drawer. The college fund? Still untouched. The house? Still in my name. And yet they were already acting like I was gone. Then came the morning that confirmed everything. I walked into the kitchen and saw Kyle and Paula sitting at the table, whispering. They froze when they saw me, but I'd already caught one word: facility. Kyle looked right through me and muttered, "She didn't hear that." I poured my coffee slowly, letting the silence fill the room. I looked out the window at the garden Cliff and I had built together. The hydrangeas were blooming again, tough little things, just like us. I'm old, I said out loud, more to myself than to them. But I'm not deaf. They didn't say a word. That's when I knew, they were trying to push me out before I could say no. So I let them keep thinking I was fading. Let them whisper, while I paid attention to every word. That night, I opened my journal again. I drew a line next to Kyle's name in the "Who Avoids" column and underlined it twice. Next to Daniel and Paula's names, I wrote, "They want the house, not the woman in it." I closed the book with a small smile. Let them keep whispering. I was listening. A week later, I reached my breaking point. Paula came up with the idea, some casual dinner for her yoga friends and Daniel's coworkers. "We'll grill, keep it light," she said. "Maybe you could make that lemon cake they like." I didn't say anything. I baked the cake anyway. Maybe out of habit. Maybe a bit of sentiment. But I didn't plan to stay. That evening, the house filled with the smell of grilled meat and sweet perfume. Laughter floated in from the back patio like smoke, thin, light, choking. I stayed in the kitchen, away from everyone. Nobody noticed. Not even Daniel, who used to peek in to help with the dishes when he was a boy. I stood by the sink, just out of sight, listening. Always listening. I was still standing in the kitchen, quietly listening, when I heard Kyle's voice ring out across the patio. It was loud, cold, and full of that sarcastic tone he picked up from Paula. "So get this," he told the half-drunk group gathered around him, "Grandma fell in the lake at the barbecue. She was flailing like a flipped turtle, screaming, 'Help me! Help me!'" They all burst into real, loud laughter. He kept going. And I'm just standing there thinking, you're not actually drowning. She probably just wanted some sympathy. You know how old people are, they use helplessness like a weapon. Someone nearby muttered, "That's dark, Kyle." But Kyle just laughed harder. "Nah, she's fine. Tough old bird. Tough old bird." That's all I was to him. Not the woman who paid for his braces. Not the one who stayed up late comforting him during his asthma attacks. Not the grandma who saved every little drawing he ever made in a binder under her bed. Just some bird. I stood frozen behind the glass door, my hands shaking, not from age, but from pure rage. Then Paula chimed in, her voice soft but sharp like a knife. "She's a liability," she said. "Not family." I told Daniel, "We need to think about the future, not sentiment." A liability. It wasn't the first time I'd felt unwanted. But this time? This time it was final. I didn't say a word. Didn't cry. I just walked to my room, closed the door behind me, and sat down on the bed. Their laughter was muffled now, like it was coming from another world. And something in me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even sad. I was done. It was the clarity I'd been waiting for, the final stamp of approval on the unspoken agreement they'd made the day Kyle pushed me into that lake. I opened my bedside drawer and pulled out the envelope with Peter's card, the lawyer. I picked up my phone, looked at the number, and dialed. He answered on the second ring. "It's Margaret," I said. "I'm ready." He didn't even ask what I meant. Just said, "Come in tomorrow. Bring the documents and your ID." "I already have," I told him. When I hung up, I walked quietly down the hall. The laughter was softer now, distant, like it belonged to strangers. The lemon cake I baked was still sitting untouched on the counter. I took a knife, cut one perfect slice, not for them, for me, and sat at the table alone, eating it slowly. Let them drink and laugh and talk like I wasn't there. Let them gossip and toast and pretend I didn't matter. Because starting tomorrow, they were going to find out just how invisible I could really become. And when the silence hit, not just quiet, but true silence, they'd feel it. It wouldn't be weakness. It would be my goodbye. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the little desk in my room, the same one where I helped Kyle write his college essays, and opened my laptop. The Scholarship Foundation's site was already bookmarked. Cliff and I had supported it for years. Their motto stuck with me: education should be earned, not inherited. I filled in the form. Donation amount, $50,000. Donor name, in memory of Clifford James Walker Fund, STEM Scholarship for First Generation Students Anonymous? Yes. Before clicking confirm, I paused. My fingers hovered over the keys. I thought of little Kyle. 9 years old, missing teeth, smiling up at me and saying, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to make machines that help people breathe better." He doesn't talk like that anymore. Honestly, he barely talks to me at all. Click. It was done. No second login. No follow-up email. Just a quiet, final transfer. I opened a new browser tab. This time, I searched Amrak. Bought a one-way ticket. Leaving Sunday. Destination, Silver Pines, a peaceful retirement community 2 states over. Dolores had a friend who lived there and said it was quiet but not boring. A garden. A workshop. People who played chess without cheating. Sounded perfect. I chose the earliest morning train. The kind of ride you take when you want to leave without a fuss. That night, while the house slept, I packed a small suitcase. 3 sweaters. My gardening gloves. Cliff's flannel. My leather journal. And 1 photo, me holding baby Kyle. Just 1. Everything else that mattered was already taken care of. The paperwork, the accounts, the valuables, secure and done. What I left behind was just stuff. Old clothes. Forgotten kitchen tools. Birthday cards they barely glanced at before shoving in drawers. Let them keep all that. Let them dig through the remains of the life they overlooked. Like vultures picking over something they helped destroy. "I'm heading out this weekend with Dolores," I said aloud, I stood in the kitchen doorway that Friday evening and said, "I'm heading out this weekend with Dolores. She wants company on a little road trip." Daniel didn't even glance up from his phone. "Cool," he muttered. Kyle brushed past me on his way to the fridge without saying a word. Paula was the only one who responded, and even that felt flat. "Drive safe," she said, folding laundry like she cared more about sorting socks than the fact I was leaving. Not a single one of them asked where I was going. Not one asked why. No one offered to carry my bag. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just them being distracted or careless. This was on purpose. They were done pretending. In their minds, I was already packed away, labeled and filed under, "too old to matter." I could almost hear their thoughts. "Let her go. We'll be here when the will is read." My suitcase sat by the door all evening. I caught them glancing at it more than once, but none of them asked when I'd be back. The truth is, they already knew. I wasn't coming back. I told them I'd be gone for the weekend. But that was a lie I needed to say out loud, for me. Because I wasn't just leaving the house. I was leaving them. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around at the walls. These same walls had once echoed with Kyle's laughter, held the smudges of little handprints from art projects, and hummed with Cliff's soft singing while he fixed things around the house. Now they were just walls, quiet, cold, and empty. My alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. I moved quietly, brushing my hair, folding my blanket, making the bed like I had 100 times before. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. At 6 o'clock on the dot, Dolores pulled up. Her headlights were dim. Her car engine purred like a secret ready to be kept. I paused in the living room for one last look. This house had once held my whole life, but over time, the people inside had drained it of meaning. Now, all I felt was space. I walked out with my suitcase and shut the door behind me as gently as I could. No one woke up. Not even Kyle. As we drove toward the station, Dolores glanced at me. "They didn't even ask where you were going, did they?" I shook my head. "Didn't even look up." She made a small sound, half laugh, half sigh. "Imagine that. You disappear and no one even notices." "I prefer it this way," I said. And I meant it. At the train station, she hugged me and pressed a small envelope into my hand. "Just in case," she whispered. I nodded. We didn't cry. Women like us, we've been through births, deaths, and everything in between. We don't cry over freedom. The train pulled in with a low roar. I boarded with just my suitcase and found a seat by the window. As the town faded behind me, replaced by trees, sky, and the unknown, I let out a deep breath. One I didn't even realize I'd been holding for years. This wasn't a getaway. This was a new beginning. Back in that quiet house, they wouldn't even notice I was gone, not at first. Not until the freezer was empty, the towels ran out, and they realized the woman they once called Grandma wasn't there to clean up after them anymore. They didn't see me off. But they'd feel my absence. And that, right there, that's the kind of goodbye they'd never forget. Silver Pines was quiet, but not in a sad way. It was peaceful. Birds sang in the morning. You could hear the shuffle of slippers in the hallway and soft classical music from next door. My room was small and simple. A bed by the window. A bookshelf. A chair that didn't squeak when I sat in it. I hung Cliff's flannel on a hook by the door. I placed the baby photo of Kyle on the windowsill, not as a memory to cry over, but like a little statue. A reminder. He was just a boy I loved once. Not a man who earned the right to own me. That afternoon, I sat at my new desk and started a letter, not just to Kyle, but to all of them. Daniel, Paula, Kyle. I wrote their names at the top like I was writing an obituary. Then I began. I was the one who stayed up when Kyle couldn't sleep. I was the one who paid for his school, his shoes, his future. I was the one who never missed a birthday. Even when you forgot mine. I listened. I waited. I hoped. And in return? You laughed at my fears. You ignored my needs. You treated my presence like clutter. You mocked me when I was drowning. I stopped writing for a moment and placed my hand over my heart. It wasn't racing, not like it used to when I tried to speak up. It was steady. Calm. I picked the pen back up. This isn't revenge. I'm not trying to punish you. But I will not keep giving to people who treat my love like a bargaining chip. The university fund is gone. The inheritance will be, too. I've given enough. Now, I choose peace. At the bottom, I didn't sign it love, Grandma. I signed my full name, Margaret Elizabeth Walker. Because that's who they forgot. Not just Grandma. Not just Mom. But a whole person. A woman. A strong one. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into an envelope. No return address. I didn't add money or photos or anything fancy, just the truth, plain and honest. Then I walked down to the post office on the corner, mailed it first class, and didn't look back. On the way home, I stopped by the community garden. Some of the people living nearby had started growing vegetables. An older man was kneeling in the dirt, planting tomatoes. His hands were covered in soil. He looked up and gave me a friendly nod. "First year here?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Good place," he replied. "No one here makes you prove your worth." I smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. That's exactly why I came. Back in my room, I made a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the wind play with the trees. I didn't check my phone, I hadn't even brought one. If they wanted to reach me, they'd have to do it without tracking me, without expecting an answer. I had already said what needed to be said. Now it was their turn to sit with it. It took exactly 5 days for the first reaction to reach me. Peter, who still works in the family law office, emailed me with one of his rare laughs. He said Daniel walked in looking 10 years older and 20 pounds lighter, just from stress. Turns out, the letter had arrived at breakfast. Kyle opened it first, probably hoping it was a check, or maybe some sweet message or instructions about claiming their inheritance. But no, it was just my handwriting, clear and steady. No yelling, no guilt-tripping. Just the facts. And then, the line that hit the hardest: the university fund is gone. It's been redirected to a foundation that values decency over entitlement. Peter said. Kyle turned bright red. Paula started cursing. And Daniel just kept saying, over and over, "But we thought she'd wait." Wait for what? Wait to be respected. Wait to be useful? Wait to die? No. I had done enough waiting. That same day, Peter delivered the official paperwork, proof that the money was no longer theirs, that I had closed their digital access, and from now on, all contact would go through him. "She's listed herself as unreachable," he told them. "And she has every right to." I didn't hear their reaction, but I could picture it clearly: Paula pacing around the kitchen, furious that her careful plans had just unraveled. Daniel rubbing his temples, realizing his safety net was gone. And Kyle, poor Kyle, finally learning that you can't shame someone into silence when they've already left the room. No email. No phone number. No address. Just absence. That night, I wrapped myself in a cozy blanket and sat on my little balcony, sipping tea. 2 sparrows were arguing over a flower pot nearby. It was peaceful. Not the lonely kind of quiet, but the kind that feels earned. Like after a long storm, when the air is finally still. I wasn't sad. I didn't feel guilty. For the first time, the space between us felt honest. I hadn't vanished. I had pulled away. They wanted me small, quiet, and always available. Now they had the quiet, just not the way they expected. No more help with bills, no emergency loans. No last minute babysitting. No college fund. Just distance. Just me, Margaret Elizabeth Walker. Still alive. Still breathing. Just somewhere else. They'd probably tell people I lost it. That I ran away. Let them. Because one day, when they really think back, they'll remember, I gave everything I had, until it almost broke me. And then I stopped. Not out of cruelty, but because I finally realized, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And I was done being their matchstick. 3 days later, Peter forwarded me the first email. Subject line: urgent. Please call us, Mom. It was from Daniel, full of scrambled words, no punctuation, just panic. We just want to talk. We're not mad. We're confused. We didn't know you were upset. Kyle's a mess. Please let us explain. Explain what? That I imagined the pain? That I misunderstood the way they laughed at me? That being called a burden was actually meant kindly? No. They didn't want to talk. They wanted access. Peter asked if I wanted him to reply. I said no. Let them sit in their own silence for a while. That same week, they tried to log into the bank, denied. They emailed the Scholarship Foundation, denied. And then came the boldest move of all, they reported me missing. An actual police officer showed up at Peter's office asking if there was any concern for my safety. Peter, bless him, handed over the documents. Margaret Walker is mentally sound. She left by choice. She has no legal duty to inform people she's protecting herself from. The next day, they tried again. This time with Kyle. Peter didn't pick up when I called, but he sent an email with the subject line, "They're scrambling." I didn't open it right away. I just sat there, letting the truth sink in, not because I wanted to enjoy their panic, but because I needed to remind myself that I had the right to walk away. It's strange, the guilt that creeps in when you stop taking care of people who got used to your silence. It comes in waves. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they'll change. But guilt, that's just the cost we're taught to pay when we grow up thinking love has to hurt. I'm not paying that price anymore. I didn't answer the email. I didn't flinch. Instead, I spent the day in the garden, digging my fingers into the warm soil, planting seeds like I was challenging the earth to start over with me. Later that evening, Dolores called. "They're spiraling," she said. Words getting around. Paula's yoga friends are whispering. One of them asked if you had dementia. I laughed. Not a fake, polite laugh. A real, freeing laugh. "Well," I said, "then I must be the most organized dementia patient they've ever met." Dolores paused for a second. "Are you really okay with them thinking you're gone?" I looked out the window at the sun setting over the marigolds. "I'm not gone," I said. "I'm just not available." Because that's the truth, isn't it? They wanted me to stay in the background, quiet, helpful, invisible. Always there when they needed me. Never when they didn't. Convenient. Disposable. Now I'm gone, but not missing. They didn't lose me. They pushed me out. And now that I've finally stepped away, they're suddenly desperate to hear me. But it's too late for that. This isn't some family standoff. This is me, leaving. For good. And this time, I get to decide when it ends. Peter called it, the moment the floor gave out. He had them all, Daniel, Paula, and Kyle, gathered in his office. They didn't believe any of it was real until someone with a title behind a desk told them it was. Daniel came in with a clenched jaw. Paula wore her best, "I'm the victim" cardigan. And Kyle, he looked like a little kid again. Not because he felt sorry. Because, for the first time, the world wasn't bending to him. Peter had everything ready, just like I'd asked. No chit-chat. No explanations. Just the truth. He slid the folder across the table, looked each of them in the eye, and said, "This is from Margaret Walker." Then he read it aloud. "To those who thought my silence meant I agreed, I gave everything once. I won't die twice. You took my time, my home, my peace. You drained me while telling others you were taking care of me. You laughed while I was drowning and then wondered why I didn't ask for your help. Let me be clear. The university fund is gone. The inheritance has been restructured. The house will be donated. My assets will not go to people who treated me like I was clutter waiting to be cleaned up." Daniel tried to interrupt, but Peter raised his hand. "She gave me full permission to read this," he said, and continued, "You'll receive nothing from me in death, because you gave me nothing of value in life. Not love. Not care. Not even basic respect. You loved my money more than you ever loved me. And now that money is going to people who still believe in kindness." Peter told me. Paula turned red, then pale. Kyle mumbled something under his breath. But no one cared. Daniel stood up and shouted, "She's lost her mind." Peter just looked at him calmly and said, "No. She found it." When Peter emailed me the full transcript a few days later, I read it slowly, sitting in the garden with my tea and a blanket Dolores had crocheted. Every word felt like a deep breath. Like fresh air. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was the truth finally spoken out loud. They wrote the story. I just finished it. In their version of things, I was supposed to forgive quietly, give endlessly, and fade gently into the background. But I didn't. I spoke up. I walked away. And I gave my love to people who still wanted it, not the ones who just expected it. At the bottom of the letter, Peter had bolded the final line, just like I asked, "Being alone is better than being used." And that was it. The dream they had of inheritance, gone. Not with a big dramatic scene, but in a quiet office under soft lights, spoken in calm truth. They left in silence. Not because they finally understood, but because they had nothing left to say. Their grip was gone. And all that was left was the echo of everything they took for granted. I didn't need to be there to watch it. Some endings are better seen from a distance. Dolores said it all started with a door slamming. Kyle had just come back from his college's financial office. He was holding a folder full of bad news, and blaming everyone but himself. No one told him the money was gone. He's gone, Kyle shouted. Paula snapped right back at him. Maybe if you hadn't laughed when she almost died, you'd still have a future worth funding. Daniel didn't say anything. He just stood there rubbing his temples, like if he pressed hard enough, he could rewrite the past and make it all better. After that blow-up, Kyle didn't go back to school. And when the scholarship office told him the fund no longer existed, no check, no tuition, he finally got it. He wasn't being punished. He was just no longer included. Dolores called me not long after. She said the gossip was everywhere. Whispers at the grocery store. Sideways glances at church. They said you disappeared, she told me over the phone. I smiled into my tea and said, no, I didn't disappear. I just pulled my investment from a toxic business. I laughed so hard I had to set my cup down. Back at the lake house, though, things were falling apart. Daniel started drinking. Again. First just a beer at dinner. Then wine. Then whiskey. Paula was complaining to her sister non-stop. Mom's disappearance ruined everything, she said. But not once did they say I left. To them, I was still some ghost, something that happened to them, not someone who made a choice. I wasn't a woman with a voice. I was just Mom, and they believed I owed them more. But the community? They didn't buy it for long. Once Peter confirmed that I was alive, safe, and had legally moved all my affairs, they started remembering who I really was. Those same neighbors who used to smile politely at Paula now turned away at potlucks. The church folks gave Daniel a half-hearted hello but stopped asking him to speak at men's breakfasts. Their image didn't shatter with some big scandal. It just faded. Faded under the truth. Because people started to remember things. Like who raised Kyle when his parents didn't show up. Who quietly loaned them money for vacations. Who brought fresh flowers to weddings, baked lemon cake for every funeral, and never once asked for thanks. Me. And now, I was gone. Their little social circle didn't fall apart. It just moved on, without them. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply stopped showing up. Stopped giving. Stopped being their quiet support system. Kyle's friends stopped calling when he dropped out. His phone, once a tool for endless judgment and jabs, now sat face down. Most of the time. Daniel and Paula fought more and more. Loud, angry fights that echoed through the house. The same house that used to smell like my baking now smelled like nothing. The fridge stayed empty. The mail stacked up. One night, Dolores called again. She said she heard Paula screaming on the porch. Something about, how dare she take everything. But here's the truth, I didn't take everything. I left the curtains. The dishes. The keys. And the silence. They still had each other. But now I think they're starting to realize, they only liked me quiet because I was the one carrying all their mess in that silence. Now the weight is theirs. And me? I'm here. Sitting on my little balcony with a warm drink in my hands. Sunlight on my face. Surrounded by people who say, please, and thank you, without expecting anything in return. Let them sit in the silence. It's not mine to fill anymore.